Hello, welcome to the next daily drawing. Today we're going to be drawing a cow. Where we live, we have lots and lots of cows in the area. Alright, so if we're looking at the shape of the cow, the body is very much kind of like a really long, big rectangle. And then we have kind of a triangle for the neck, triangle for the head, and then we have pretty simplified legs. So to get started, what we're going to do is we're going to first do that rectangle for the body. So I'm going to keep my camera down here so I can still use it. I'm just going to draw the cow up here. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a relatively long rectangle. My main concern is that I don't want it to be like a perfect rectangle. It would be a lot better if it's kind of somewhat like kind of a sloppier rectangle. So don't make it perfectly straight, and don't make the corners perfectly pointy or anything like that. All right, so once I get about the length that I want, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and move on to the neck. Now I will have to hold on, pause. My dog's doing something weird. Here, I'll let you see. Hang on. He's just like staring at that bone over there. Oh, hey, buddy. You're so cute. I love you. All right, so what we're going to do next is after we finish the body, then we're going to do the neck. So the thing that we're going to do for the neck is we're going to start off with a diagonal line that's just very subtle. We want to keep it relatively flat. If you'll notice, it stays really flat and the neck only goes up a tiny bit. So I'm going to do a very slight diagonal line like this. And then I'm also going to do the same thing down here, except this time though, I'm going to actually do a slight curve like this. And then my goal is to connect it up there to that diagonal line I just drew. So slight curve, connecting it back up. Now the reason that we connect it up, it's going to create this kind of flatter surface right here. We're going to use that to kind of help with adding the head. After we have, it's almost like a teardroppy shape that got cut off. After we have the neck shape, we're going to then do the head. If I look at the size of the head, notice how incredibly small the head is compared to the rest of the body. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh gosh, I can fit like 5 or 6 heads in there. So when you draw the head, make sure you don't draw it really big. Otherwise it'll look a little awkward compared to the rest of the body. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw, starting at the top right here, I'm going to create a slight frowny face like this for the top of the head. And then I'm going to make it a slight diagonal line going down, not too far, otherwise the head will get too big. And then once I get however long that I want my face to be, then I'm just going to curve it back in. So it's going to look kind of like a really big greater than less than sign for my head itself. All right, now we are going to tweak this a lot. This is just to get us the basic shape of it. So if you want to, you can actually measure it. So I'm going to go like 1, 2, 3, 4. I can only fit like 4.5, so my cow's head's a little bigger than it should be. But I actually kind of want to leave it that way because I think it'll look pretty cute. If you haven't noticed that with a lot of the animals we've been drawing, if you draw the head bigger, it makes it look like it's slightly younger. If you draw it a little bit smaller, it makes it look like it's a little bit older, within reason, of course. So mine's going to be looking a little bit younger. If you want it to be accurate for this particular picture, feel free to shrink it down so it's a little smaller. All right, so I'm going to zoom in and focus on just the face, and then I'll come back for the rest of this. If I look at the head itself, it's got a lot going on here. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on the shape of the head, and then I'll focus on the actual details and stuff. So the first thing that I want to do is I'm going to change it so that I have a slight indent right here for the eyebrow area. So to do that, on my forehead right here, I'm just going to create a little bit of a bump like this. All I'm doing is I'm just changing it. So I'm following the forehead like I have as is, and then I'm just lowering it just slightly, and then I'll just take that out to the actual end of the face right here. I would strongly suggest, if you're using a pencil, go ahead and erase as you go. That way it's going to be a lot easier to keep up with which lines you want to keep and which lines you don't. So now that I have my drop down, if you'll notice, the nose kind of sticks up just slightly, and it's very round at the end. So at the tip of this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to very slightly go up and then curve it down. Now here we can actually see this right here is the mouth itself, and you can just barely see the bottom jaw. So what I'm going to do is, as I'm curving that down, I'm actually going to go in the head a little bit. I want my cow to smile, so I'm going to exaggerate that little curve and go up just a tiny bit. Notice that the mouth doesn't go super far in. I've actually probably taken mine a little too far, so I'm going to shorten it a bit. But the mouth is actually pretty small compared to the rest of its muzzle. The mouth doesn't stretch all the way out to here. That would look very creepy. So its mouth stays relatively small. So don't make the mouth too big. All right, once I have the line for my top part of my jaw, I'm just going to do my bottom part of the jaw by starting a little bit lower like this. I don't want to start even right here because that would be too long. I'm going to move down about halfway between the mouth and the muzzle, and then I'm just going to add a slight bump by adding a smile like this. I'm going to curve it up like that. So just a slight bump. And then something really distinctive of cows is they have very blocky jaws. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of round this down, and then there's a little bit of a skin flap underneath that I'm not sure if that's distinctive of only this breed of cow or what, but I'm going to curve this down around that shape that I have here, and I'm just going to curve it back up like this, just to try to give it a little bit more mass so that it's a little bit more of a thicker jaw area. If you make it too slender, it's going to start looking more like a horse. So be careful not to make it look too slender. All right, now for that kind of wibbly thing, for the extra stuff on the neck, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to start somewhere right below the jaw, and then I'm just going to draw kind of like a wiggly line, or like a slight kind of a smiley face and then a frowny face, to where we have a slight change in direction until it touches back on the neck. Once it touches on the neck, then I can stop, and that'll be kind of like that little wrinkly thing below their necks. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and draw the ear, and then I'll come back and do the eye and the nose later. So if I notice, here's where I ended that jaw. Do you see how the ear is right above that? We have the roundness of the ear where it starts, and then we have the ear kind of coming out from there. So right here, before I touch the top of the head, but above the jaw, I'm going to very lightly draw a circle. And then I'm going to draw the ear coming out of that. Now in this particular picture, the ears are facing forward. So what I'm going to do to start that, if you'll notice, it actually doesn't start at the tip of the circle. It starts a little bit further down on the front. So I'm going to start on the front of my circle. And then I'm just going to do a diagonal line until it gets just slightly outside of my head. Once I've gotten slightly outside of the head, I'm just going to do a parenthesis like this. And then I'm just going to curve that parenthesis down just a little ways. That way we have the ear curving down like this, and then it's just going to go flat and connect to the bottom of that circle that we've drawn. So diagonal line for the front, slight curve for the side that's facing the forward part, and then a somewhat flat line to connect it back to that circle. Now once you have all of that connected, we can actually get rid of that circle. That way it makes the ear look a lot more complete, and it feels like it's not like really structured too much. All right, now I don't see the inside of the ear because it's forward facing, but I do see the stuff that goes behind the ear back here. So I don't know if it's a horn or just like a weird forehead bump. There is that kind of like frowny face shape on the top of their head. So it's kind of like they're wearing like a weird little fluffy hat. So behind the ear, I'm just going to draw a frowny face. Then I'm just going to curve that frowny face down onto the neck. If you want to go ahead and add a texture, I'm actually going to get rid of my extra lines first to make it cleaner. All I see here is I just see like a little fluffy texture on the top. So I'm just going to draw a little wiggly line on the top that it may not be necessary, but I'm just going to draw it anyway. If you're drawing like a bull, it might have the horns coming out this part maybe. Don't quote me on that because I'm not a cow expert. All right, so now that I have my ear and I have my little tufty thing on the head, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do the nose first, and then I'll do the eye last. Here I can see the nose is on the very tip, and it just makes a little bit of a smiley face. So on the very tip of the nose, I'm just going to draw like a little smiley face like this, and that's all I see for the nose. It doesn't cause anything to bump out or go in or anything. It's very simple. So now that I have my nose, I'm actually going to just very lightly draw a diagonal line, kind of following the nose line going back here, or the muzzle line, so that I can see where I'm going to put my ear, or my eye. So if you'll notice, the eye is going to be right there across from that forehead bump, and it's going to make kind of a greater and less than sign with a curve on the front. So right here is where I put my forehead. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a greater than less than sign. Doesn't have to be perfect. You can make it a little bit curvy if you want to. And by the way, if your ear has accidentally covered your eye, you might need to move the ear back if you're wanting to see the eye. If your ear is too far down, feel free to move it, or if it's too far up, feel free to move it. So that's kind of up to you depending on where you put that particular ear location. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a slight smile, or a slight parenthesis in the front. And then as usual, I'm just going to leave a little highlight and then fill in the rest, just to give the cow a little bit more of a life-looking feel to it. If you want your ear to face backwards, you can move it to face the back. I'll demonstrate that here. So if you want your ear to go backwards instead of forwards, you're going to follow that same kind of rule. So if you have a circly shape, you can just draw a diagonal line going back, slight parenthesis, and then a diagonal line going back to the front. And then if you do have the ear facing the back though, you would be able to see the inside of the ear, so keep that in mind, okay? So if you want the ear to face the back, feel free to, but you should also be able to see a little bit more of that forehead area. So it depends on if you want the ear to the front or if you want it to the back. I actually kind of like the look of it going to the back a little more, so I'm probably going to keep it this way. I am very indecisive, so I might move it. I'm also going to draw a slight bump for an ear on the other side of the head, because I feel like that would help complete the feeling of the front of the head area. All right, so now I'm very satisfied with the head shape, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to the rest of the body. All right, so for the rest of the body, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw... All right, so for the rest of the body, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and draw the legs. So actually, probably before I do that, I might need to kind of fix up the body a little bit. So if you'll notice on the back of the body, we do have a slight dip, and then this kind of curves. So if you did draw that super straight, make sure it has a slight dip to it to kind of get that slight curvature of the back. And then for the body itself, this is that weird flappy thing that came down from the neck. I would draw a slight downward curve like this for the kind of like the torso muscles right here, or like the little hangy down thing or whatever it's called that comes down from the neck. So exaggerate that with a big smile, and then you can get rid of the upper part of the neck here. I would suggest keep this body chunk right here though, because we're going to need that for the legs. All right, and then yeah, so now that we have that kind of curve for the body, now I can go ahead and move on to the legs. So the legs are not too complicated. If I look at the shape and stuff of the legs, then I can see, oops, hang on. All right, so then I can see kind of like where they connect. Now their shoulder muscles actually do, you can kind of see an indication that's like the top of their shoulder muscle. And then we can see that the leg goes down and then it goes back up here. It does have a knobby knee right there, and then the feet are kind of simple down at the bottom. So to draw that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a curve at the front. So this is that area right there where the neck met the body. So I'm just going to draw a parenthesis right here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to flip it and go the opposite way. So opposite parenthesis. So we get that kind of wonky line. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring that straight down however long I need my leg. So the length of the leg is not too long, but you don't want to make it look super short. Otherwise you're going to get like a corgi cow, which would be so cute. I wonder if those are real. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the leg down until I think that it looks pretty decent. So I think that looks like it's far enough down. If you need to make it longer, it's not hard to lengthen it later on in the drawing. All right, so now that I have this, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go forward slightly, kind of like what we did if you drew the horse with me earlier. And then I'm going to draw a slight flat line that is slightly curved up. And then I'm going to go upwards like this. If you want to go ahead and draw the curvature of the hoof, you can draw a little parenthesis right here so that you have your hoof shape. And then I see that there is a little bit of a bump on the back of their feet right here. So I'm going to draw a little bit of a smile. And then I'm going to go up. I'm not going to worry about the knobs yet. I'm going to add those later. But then I'm going to go up until I touch the body. And I'm going to go a little bit further into the body as well. So you don't want to stop right here because that'll feel awkward. Go a little bit further up into the body. And what I'm doing here is I'm adding a slight bump. That slight bump is kind of emphasizing kind of like the elbow of the cow. So you don't have to add that, but if you do want to add a little bit more detail for more realism, feel free to add that little bit of a bump, and then you can erase the inside pieces. Once you have the inside pieces erased, if you want to leave your legs smooth, you can, but if you would like to add a knob for the knee, somewhere about like halfway-ish down, you just add a little bit of a bump on the side of the legs, just to give it a little bit of a knobby knee, and then just erase the interiors so that you have that knee looking a little bit wider in this part. You can even add like a little bit of a smile down here to indicate that there is a knob on that knee. All right, so once you are satisfied with the thickness and length of the leg, then what you can do is you can move on to the other ones. I'm actually going to go ahead and draw this back leg back here first, and then I'm going to draw the legs that are overlapping on the other side of the body afterwards. All right, so now that I'm done with these front two legs, I'm going to go ahead and move on to this one. If I look at it, I can see that the thigh is really big. We have a massive thigh. It's going all the way from here. It has a slight curve right here, and then it goes into the body. So this whole area right here is the thigh. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this part of the body. I'm going to make it have a slight parenthesis in the back, and then I'm going to change that into a parenthesis going into the body. Now, once I get to this part though, I can see that the belly creates a slight curve right here. So I'm actually going to draw a slight indent facing inwards like this. So if you want to get rid of any sharp pointy parts, that way it's not too distracting. All right, so now that I have the thickness of the thigh, I can erase the inside of the body. That way I don't have to worry about it later on. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to add the bottom of the foot. So I would suggest drawing the foot first before you're drawing the leg. That way you know where you're connecting it. So it should be as far down as this foot is right here. So I'm going to go across from here. And then I'm going to draw the hoof directly below the back center of the body. So I'm just going to draw a hoof shape by drawing that diagonal line, flat line, and then up line like this. And then of course you can go and draw the actual hoof shape itself if you would like. Now that I have my hoof, my goal is that I want to do the front part. I'm going to connect the hoof to the body itself like this, or to the outer part of that thigh. Once I have that part connected, this part's a little bit different because it does have the ankle sticking out. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to follow this curve in a little bit, and then I'm going to curve it out and then back down so that it connects it to the foot. Now, if you get to this part and you think that it looks too thick or it looks too thin, just exaggerate the distance that you're curving it in, either making it go in more or making it go out more. That kind of depends on however thick that you need your cow's hoofs or legs to be. I would suggest, if you are going for realism, add that little bump on the back of the leg so that we get that little ankle thing, whatever that is. I have no idea about cow anatomy. It's just the thing I see when I draw it. All right. So now I have my bulkier leg areas. Now this is a cow, so it does have udders down here. It's probably a dairy cow of some sort. So to get that particular part, and the reason I'm doing these before the leg is because notice that this is in front of the leg. It's always easier to draw, for me anyway, to draw the things that are in front and then draw the things that are in back. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change up the belly shape a little bit. This is kind of flat, and I see that the belly is actually a little bit more rounded, and then it curves up into that leg area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a slight parenthesis, and I'm going to change that to a slight frown. So I'm adding a wonky line. So a slight parenthesis, or a slight smiley face, and then a slight frown. Now within this frown area, that's where I'm going to draw my udder. So I'm going to start off drawing the udder with just a smile, like this, however far down that you want the udder to go. And then after you draw the smile, then you have the parts that hang down, which are just also more smiles. And in this particular picture, I only see 2. I think they're supposed to have like 4, but I don't know. Once again, not a cow person, so I don't know. So if you, yeah, I'm pretty sure there's 4. So if you wanted to, you can draw 2 more that are slightly smaller, that are overlapping, just to make it feel like there are the actual 4 that are back there. But that's optional. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. All right, so now I have my udders. Now, once you have your udders done, then you can go back and do this other foot. So notice if I go across from it, it's a little bit shorter than that one. So I'm going to go up a little bit, and then I'm going to go over. I notice that it's actually below the udder right here. So if I go below the udder a little bit higher than that previous foot, I'm going to go ahead and draw the foot itself first. So just like I drew the other hooves. And then I'm just going to draw a diagonal line up until it touches the udder. And then back here, I do see the ankle before I see the diagonal line. So I do want to drop down straight first, and then curve it to meet that foot. And then once again, if you want to have the little ankle bump thing or whatever that is at the bottom, you can have that little bit of a curve there if you choose to have that. All right, so now that I have this foot, I want to go across from that foot, and that's where I'm going to put the other one, somewhere close to it. So I'm just going to draw the hoof shape, and this time, because the hoof is overlapped behind this one, I'm not going to see the entire hoof. So all I'm doing is I'm just drawing part of the hoof, so it looks like it's growing out of the other foot, which could be a little bit weird looking at first, but because they're overlapping so close, that's the reason I'm choosing to draw it that way. All right, so I do see that it comes down really close to the other one. If you are drawing the knobs for the knee, you can go ahead and just draw an indentation where you draw a slight parenthesis, and then we're just going to drop that down until we touch the foot. If you want the little bump thing, feel free to add the bump thing, so that now I have all 4 of my feet drawn out. And you can feel free to edit it or tweak it. If you look at your drawing after you have your feet done and you think that something looks too buff or not buff enough, Cows are very heavy creatures, so they do need to have strong enough legs to hold them up. But ironically, even though they are like so incredibly heavy, their legs are kind of skinny compared to their bodies. So at this point, take a moment, take a look at it, see if there's anything that looks weird to you. So if you have like a massive bulky leg and you want to make it thinner, just scoot the line in a little bit and use your eraser to help you edit and tweak that. All right, so we're almost done. All we're gonna do now is we're just gonna add the tail back here. If you'll notice on the cow's tail, it does bump up a little bit. So their spines actually end right here. And then we have a slight bump up right here where it extends into the tail and then it goes down. It's kind of thick here and then it gets really thin and then it kind of poofs out into some furry textures. All right, so to do that, I'm gonna go at the top of the body. I'm going to draw a frowny face at the top of the body like this. And then I'm gonna drop it down. And if you want your tail to kind of go off to the side, feel free to, or if you want it to go down, that's up to you. I'm just gonna follow the picture and have it curved down. All right, so after you do the frown, you're just gonna go down. This one's going relatively straight, so I'm just gonna keep it straight until it gets across from where the thigh ended. And that's where you're gonna start seeing it kind of go out into more of a fluffy texture. So I'm just gonna draw mine as a teardrop shape. You can draw yours as any shape that you want. I'm just gonna keep it pretty simple as a teardrop. And then you're just gonna follow it back with almost a parallel line. I'm gonna keep it really thin at first. I'm gonna allow it to get a little thicker as it gets closer to the top of the body. And then once I get to the top of the body, I can erase this part right here. That way it makes it feel more like the tail is part of its own thing and not connected. I'm gonna leave a little bit of the thigh indented though, just to give it a little bit more of an overlap. And then afterwards, if you want to add texture to the tail, feel free to add some textures. All I'm doing is I'm just adding lines going up from the center and then adding lines coming out from the center, just to give it a little bit of texture. You can even add some lines coming out from the sides if you want to give it a little bit more of a floof texture. All right, so here is my basic cow. Now, cows have extremely short fur, so I would not personally add too much texture to them. If you want to add a couple little bitty lines, you can, but I wouldn't suggest going too crazy because they are so smooth. But that's entirely up to you. There are some cows that have kind of longer, fluffier fur, so feel free to add that if you would like. Something that I do want to add is I'm going to add a pattern to this cow. If you want to add your own pattern, that would be like super cool. I've seen some cows that have like really unique patterns. I'm just going to kind of follow along with this picture though, just to keep it somewhat accurate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw very lightly the shapes that I see on this cow. Now, something about this cow is that it has very organic shapes. Organic shapes just meaning that they're really kind of random. There's not a whole lot of a structure to them. And you don't have to follow the picture exactly. If you are choosing to do a picture, you can kind of make up your own designs and stuff. I would just suggest keep them kind of rougher on the edges if you're kind of making it look more realistic. If you make it look too smooth on the edges, it's going to look more cartoony. So if you're going for that, definitely feel free to. But if you're trying to keep it more realistic, do keep your edges a little bit rougher and don't make them so perfect. What I mean by that is like, don't do like spots that are perfect circles or perfect ovals. Allow them to be a little bit more wonky, and that'll help make it feel more believable so that it's not super perfect. So even drawing just a circle, because some of them do have circles. Notice this slight difference between this circle and this one. This one's a little bit more wonky, therefore a little bit more believable. All right, now that I have that done, if you want to add some more textures, instead of doing fur textures, you can add some like wrinkly textures. All I'm doing is I'm just very lightly kind of sketching, using kind of these kinds of lines, sketching in some wrinkly areas and adding some overlaps and stuff where I see that the cow does have some wrinkles and stuff on its face, some wrinkles around its eyes, and things of that nature that I see on the picture. So I'm going to add those a little bit. You don't have to do this step. I just personally like adding details, because the detailing is one of my favorite parts to do in a picture, because depending on how you do it, it might take a really long time or it might go really, really fast. But I just like the look of a picture whenever it has just a couple extra details added to it, because I think it just makes it look really, really cool. All right, so now that I've gotten a little bit more of a wrinkly cow, all I got left to do is just shade it. So if you choose to color it, that would be awesome. So you don't have to do this shading part with me if you don't want to. Once again, I'm just holding my pencil kind of sideways, and then just letting mostly the weight of the pencil itself, plus a little bit of the weight of my finger to kind of push it down to help add some of that shading. And the places that I'm shading is I'm just kind of following this picture to add a little bit of shading in the areas that are being overlapped by the body, especially the legs that are kind of more in the back. Adding some shading to those legs, especially behind this udder here, can really help push them backwards a little bit so that they don't stand out as much as the things that are in front of it, which is really helpful whenever you're trying to communicate what parts are being overlapped by which parts in particular. All right, so yeah, so there's how to draw a cow. I hope that you guys had fun. And if you drew like a baby cow or an older cow, or if you added some fluffy textures to your cow, I would love to see what you guys have created, because I think that stuff is really, really cool. All right, so there is how to draw a cow. Hope you guys had fun. All right, thank you for watching. Have a good day. Bye.